Hello and welcome back to my channel. And today we're going to discuss the criticisms of Anekantavad and Syadvad of the Jain philosophy. In this previous video, we read about the concept of the manyness of the reality, which was propagated by the Jain philosophy in their theory of Anekantavad. And on similar terms, in order to justify the Anekantavad claims of the Jain philosophy, they propagated the theory of Syadvad, which was attributed that all the judgments which we make are relative and conditional. So they gave certain elaborative explanations about why are they substantiating it and why are they describing it. However, there are certain critics of it, so we just read about them. First of all, the Buddhists and the Vedantins have criticized Syadvad as self-contradictory doctrine. They say they take Syad in the popular sense of probability. What Jainas meant by the Syad was that from a particular frame of reference or from a particular standpoint. But what Buddhist and Vedanta interpret Syad is that something which defines a popular sense of probability. For them, contradictory attributes like existence, non-existence, unity, plurality, and permanence, momentariness cannot remain at the same time in the same thing. So they mean that the theory of Syadvas is particularly self-contradictory because two different aspects of a similar thing, which are totally opposite of each other, which are existence and non-existence, unity and plurality, and permanent and momentariness of a particular or a same thing cannot exist at the same point of time. For example, light and darkness cannot remain together. They say that all our judgments, uh, which are said to be totally relative and conditional, it is a self contradictory doctrine, and two self contradictory statements cannot exist together. Shankaracharya called Shyatvad as madmen's cry, as they accept Shyatvad as skepticism or uncertainism. Skepticism is basically trying to describe something which is indescribable. It is saying that this object is indescribable and we cannot get any knowledge out of it. That is what skepticism means. And the next criticism is if everything is probable, so is Shyatvad. This is totally valid. If Jains are saying that everything is probable, they're taking the what the critics are saying is that the critics are taking Syad in terms of probability. So if everything is possible, so is the theory of Syadvad. If all truths are partial, then Syadvad becomes partially false. It is partially true and partially false, and skepticism will be a result. So we could not know the real knowledge out of it. We could not know it in the whole sense. Therefore, Shankaracharya and Ramanuja accept Syadvad as contradictory because a thing cannot be existing and non-existing at the same time. This is in lines with the view that it is a self-contradictory statement. The third is a theory of relativity cannot be logically sustained without a hypothesis of an absolute. So, if you do not know the attributes of an absolute knowledge, or if you do not know what the absolute knowledge actually means, you cannot say that there might be a theory of relativity or there might be some truths related to it. So, relativity itself is related to the absolute and presupposes its existence. For relativity to exist, there has to be an absolute truth which pre-exist the relativity. So, according to Vedant, Syadvad is self-destructive because everything is relative. Then Syadvad is also relative truth. On similar lines, they say that if all knowledge is relative, then why does the Jains accept Keval Gyan to be absolute? Since they say that you have to prefix the word Syad with every judgment you have or with every partial knowledge you say. But when the Jains say that Keval Gyan is the absolute truth, they are ignoring Syad in it and they are just self-criticize and they are just self-contradicting their own theory. Jains have self-contradicted while asserting new theories above Anekantavada. So this can also be interpreted as partially true, partially false, and there is also a partial limitation um, attributed to this very statement because they have not used the word syad, they have not described it in terms of syadvad. So they are just self-contradicting themselves as well. Moving on, the next three steps of Saptavaganya, which were a culmination of the first four statements, which were Syad Asti, Syad Nasti, Syad Asti Nasti, Syad Avyaktam. So the last three statements were a culmination of the first four statements, and what the critics say is that the last three statements of Sabdabhaganya are superfluous and redundant because there's no particular use of it. We're just uh, elaborating it for the name sense, for the namesake. Moreover, the first four were not invented by the Jainas. They are influenced by the famous Chatushkoti or the four categories of thought accepted by the Buddhism and Vedanta. So the first four statements are not of Jain origin. They are influenced from the famous Chatushkoti, which is accepted by Buddhism and Vedanta. Next, Syadva gives only seven scattered forms of judgment and makes no attempt to synthesize them. Reality is not the mathematical sum of partial viewpoints. So, in the seven different judgments, there are seven different standpoints, and the Jaina philosophy is not able to integrate all of them in order to coalesce a perceivable, or in order to synthesize them to make it more in terms of the absolute knowledge, to make it more digestible for the critics as well. So, reality, what the critics say, is not the mathematical sum of partial viewpoints. So, in the seven statements about the jug, they're just trying to refer jug from a particular or different standpoints or different point of time. But it does not paint a complete picture of the jug, or it does not paint a complete picture of the attributes of the jug. There are many such elements which are still not very much explained in the seven judgments described by the Saptabhaganya. To attain philosophical consistency, partial truths need to be organically synthesized in the absolute. So, as far as we are concerned with the validity of the Saptabhaganya and the validity of the criticisms which we have read just now, we need to ponder a little bit upon, are these criticisms truly justified? If one translates Syad as maybe or probably, then the above criticisms can be treated as valid. But according to the Jains, they treat Syad as something which describes the frame of reference, which describes from my point of view, from my standpoint, and it is not probably, or probably this might be possible. This is not what the Jains mean by the word Syad. For Jains, a Naya can become a Praman only if it is prefixed by Syad. So Naya is actually the partial knowledge or the partial truth which we have made, or the partial judgment we inferred from our statements, and it can only become uh, a praman or a valid source of knowledge if it is prefixed by the word Syad. And Syad here means the frame of reference and not probability. In such a system, the source of valid knowledge is innately having an element of doubt in it. So, we're just accepting our inability, and we are also accepting the possibility of doubt. There can be different doubts associated with our knowledge, and we are accepting it. This can be equated with skepticism, which is a philosophical position that denies the possibility of certain knowledge. So this can be attributed to skepticism because skeptics usually denies that that full complete knowledge can be uh, acquired about a certain object, and they deny the possibility of the certain knowledge. But Jainism never equates Syad with doubt. No person can be thorough skeptic, as skepticism itself is self-contradictory doctrine. Because what the skeptics say is that this knowledge, a certain knowledge about a particular thing cannot be known. But this is also skepticism, right? Because how do you know that a particular knowledge cannot be known? There may be certain truths or certain facets of it as well. So no person can be a thorough skeptic. Skepticism itself is a self-contradictory doctrine. Through their philosophy, Jains only try to convey that reality is infinitely complex and one should understand that except for omniscient ones, no one can have complete access to complete truth. So whatever you see, whatever you hear, whatever you read it on social media or every other thing, every other platform you visit, it is not the absolute truth according to Jains. What they say is the absolute truth and the access to it is only with the omniscient one. And whatever you gain in terms of knowledge is just a partial or a part of the absolute truth, a partial knowledge. That's it. Their parable of blind men and elephant is a testimony to their tolerant and accommodative approach. So the Jaina philosophy is a testament to their tolerance and the accommodative approach. Ancient Jain monk Acharya Samantabhadra anticipates this criticism and says that when analyzed from particular point of view, knowledge is definitely possible, that too without any element of doubt. So, from a particular point of view, that part of knowledge is definitely possible, and that too undoubtedly, without any hint of doubt or without any tinge of doubt. Also, Jainists never say opposing attributes like light and darkness can be ascribed upon the same substance at the same time. Only they advocate for predicating different kinds of attributes from different perspectives. So they never asserted that two conflicting ideas like light and darkness can exist in the same object at the same time. All they meant was that uh, for predicating different kinds of attributes from different perspectives in a similar in one thing. So they never said about opposing or attributes. They said about different kind of attributes from different perspectives in a same object. In the third Saptabhaginya, which was asti nasti syad asti nasti, Jains combine affirmative and negative judgments from different standpoints and contexts. So the affirmation and the negation are from different standpoints. They are not from the same one. So these are not contradicting the statements from a particular point. These are from different perspectives. It is definitely not a violation of law of excluded middle. So in the third Saptabhaganya, what they said was somehow the judge exists in the room and is not black in color. They're not trying to put a negation and affirmation on a single object from the same perspective. So these are two different perspectives. One is the existence and the another is the color. So they are two different standpoints and they're not attributing opposing attributes to the same object at the same point of time. So this is definitely not a violation of the law of excluded middle. In the fourth Saptabhaganya, which was Syad Avyaktam, something which is indescribable. When Jainists say somehow it is indescribable, they are proclaiming that opposing attributes can never be attributed to the same thing at the same time. So the Jains have actually mentioned in the fourth Saptabhaganya that opposing attributes cannot be attributed to the same thing at the same time. They have actually given answers to the criticism before the criticism was actually made on their theory. So, thus, the change of inner contradiction in Jaina theory of judgment becomes weak. However, the major shortcoming in Jaina logic is that they never attempt to synthesize the different perspectives into an organic whole. So, they have just enumerated the different standpoints or different perspectives, but they have not combined it as an organic whole so that certain or absolute knowledge can be interpreted because they've already said that the absolute knowledge can only be known by the omniscient ones, and we can have the access to just the partial knowledge. So even though they have enumerated it in seven different judgments, they have not made an attempt to synthesize them as an organic whole. Hence, even though they tried to put forward a theory which upholds identity indifference, there is sameness, or there is a twinge of something similar in different perspectives. It ends up as the one which supports identity plus difference, because there is no attempt made for synthesizing it as a whole. As they accept absolute knowledge in the form of Kebal Gyan, which is a form of immediate and intuitive knowledge. However, they hardly make any serious attempt to maintain difference between the empirical and transcendental knowledge. So they have attributed the absolute knowledge in the form of Keval Gyan, which is a form of the immediate and intuitive knowledge. But they have not made a serious attempt to maintain the difference between the empirical and the transcendental knowledge. So it's just like they have considered the knowledge to be the same for the empirical and the transcendental world, and they have not particularly differentiated between them. Madhyamik Shunyavad and Advait Vedantins, who are strong opponents of the Jain philosophy, do never deny plurality of perspectives in the empirical realm. So, in their theory of Anekantavad, Jainas define the manyness of the reality, the many attributes or the infinite attributes of a particular thing in just this empirical world. And on similar lines, the Madhyamik Shunyavadins and the Advait Vedantins, who were prominent opponents of the Jain philosophy, they also never deny pro- uh, plurality of perspectives in the empirical realm. They too make use of the first four elements of the Saptabhaganya to describe the reality, which is said that it is greatly influenced from the Chatushkoti, and it influenced the Buddhism as well as the Vedanta. However, they analyze reality from both perspectives and try to establish an organic reality, an organic relation between realities and knowledge in different levels. So the only difference between the later philosophers, or between the Shunyavadins, Advait Vedantins, and the Jains, is that they analyze reality from both the perspectives and not just one. And they try to establish an organic relation, which was not done by the Jaina philosophy. And with this organic relation between realities and knowledge in different levels, they try to synthesize the different truths. So with this, we've come to an end of this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one, where we dive deeper into Jaina philosophy and know about the substance, liberation, etc. Till then, see ya. Bye.